Thank you for joining today's event, The Future of Education. Before we start, I'd like to thank our sponsors and partners for today's event. Our appreciation goes to Yu Chung International School, Christian Alliance International School, German Swiss International School, Herald International School Hong Kong, the Harbour School, and our strategic partner Top Schools, as well as our supporting organization WISPA. This webinar is on A-levels, why British exams are the gold standard abroad, moderated by Top Schools founder and head girl, Ruth Benny, and joining her on the panel are Anne Hayden, the head of Herald International School Hong Kong, and Tom Bennett, Director of Studies of Sedgburg School. Now, without further delay, we will turn the time over to Ruth to start the discussion. Over to you, Ruth.
Thank you, Eva, and good afternoon to everyone. Thank you for joining us for the last panel in this series today. And thank you to Anne and Tom for joining us this afternoon. Welcome. We're here to talk about A-levels, and I suppose I sit here with two hats. I also am the mother of two teenagers on track for A-levels. And previously we had some discussion on different choices of different curricula that parents may be choosing. So before we get into it, could I ask each of you just to explain just the basics about the A-level program, what is it, how many, and what your school offers in terms of A-levels. And shall we start with you, Tom?
Yeah, absolutely. So A-levels are predominantly a 2-year qualification that pupils sit usually from age 16 to age 18. And in the British system, they sit after GCSEs, which are the certificate that pupils receive age 16, and they're usually used as an entrance to university or into the world of work. And there's a broad range of subjects that pupils can choose. I think on last count, I saw about 50 or so different subjects that pupils can choose from. Most schools have a selection of about 20 or 25 subjects that pupils choose from. And normally they choose 3 subjects, sometimes 4 subjects, and they study those for the 2 years of their sixth form, years 12 and 13, we call them in the UK, and they are awarded grades in those at the end of them, and those grades are letter grades. So they start, well, the top grade is an A star level, and all the way down to a grade E, which is a pass. The subjects themselves are done at a huge amount of depth, and that's one of the things that stands A-levels out from other qualifications. The smooth transition to university studies is something that is a great benefit of A-levels. But I think that's A-levels in a nutshell. I don't know if Anne has anything more to add on that.
And perhaps you can tell us about the subjects on offer at Harrow, and also because in the context of Hong Kong, it's a minority program that's offered. There's only just a few schools that offer A-levels. I wonder if you can shed any light on that.
I think what you said is, could I talk about A-levels at Harrow, Hong Kong? So we do offer the A-levels and GCSEs. We're following the British curriculum. The standard diet for our pupils is 3 A-levels and an EPQ, although we do have some pupils taking 4 A-levels, and we also have pupils who are taking further maths who take 4 A-levels and perhaps in some cases 5. And we believe that the A-level course prepares our pupils well for the university that they go to, and they go to universities across the world, and also for the world of work that they will be entering. It's like everything, decisions people have to make: Eton versus Harrow, Oxford versus Cambridge, Oxbridge versus Ivy League, A-levels versus IB. Both the IB and the A-level programme are highly regarded. Children will get an excellent education and excellent qualifications where they can access top universities across the world, whichever they choose. But we believe that it suits our children in terms of their learning styles and their ability to move on to the next stage of their education.
Thank you, Anne. And for those of you listening, thank you for joining us. If you do have any questions, feel free to type in the Q&A box. I want to address a couple of perhaps concerns that parents might have. I mean, A-levels is relatively well established. I'm not exactly sure when it was established. And is it fair to say that some parents would say it's a little bit old school? Maybe it's traditional is the word that I hear used quite a lot, levied at the A-level programme. Would you like to comment?
Yeah, should I answer that?
Well, the A-level programme has...
Oh, we have a slight delay.
Tom, you go.
Okay, well, fine. Yeah, thank you. Yes, I mean, A-levels have been around for a very long time, and I think it's testament to their strength, and it's testament to the reputation that they have lasted this long. I think one of the great things about our education system is that actually, even though the qualification has existed for a very long time, they are regularly reviewed, they're regularly reformed, and in fact, just a few years ago, they were reformed again to make them fit for purpose, to make them truly that gold standard right at the very top of the educational pile at this level of education. And yes, we have the ability to study those traditional subjects that lots of pupils do, but there are lots of new exciting subjects which many of our pupils are really clamoring to want to study. So we have very exciting business studies, economics, psychology. We've got a course in digital media, so the ability to do animations and 3D animations and all that sort of thing that you can do in an A-level course. So yes, I think the tradition is a great thing, those timeless qualities of A-levels, but they are adapting and really reflecting the modern world of work and tertiary education.
And I'm sure you'd agree. And also, if you could just add, I think earlier you missed, in the context of Hong Kong, why are A-levels not more prevalent if they are indeed the gold standard? And
I think that, I agree with what Tom said there, and I'd say that they are relevant. And there was a reform in 2016. Can you hear me, Ruth? I'm sorry, yes. The reception is terrible here. In Hong Kong, I know that there are fewer schools who are taking A-levels, and we are quite unique in that. And traditionally, schools have opted for the IB qualification. Some of the ESF schools, for example, or IB, and other schools have moved to IB. They make their own decisions on when they choose.
Anne's coming in and out, struggling with reception. Okay, I think one parent, Alice, has asked, and this does lead into an area of discussion that again, a common perception of A-levels, Tom, is that they're too narrow, maybe too deep, but limiting in the number of subjects. What would you say to that?
It's a common thing we hear, but I think one of the processes we go through when pupils choose their A-levels is, although they might end up with 3 A-levels at the end of it, a lot of schools start with a broader range of that, perhaps in the first few weeks, first term. So at our school, we allow pupils to choose 4 subjects at the beginning, which allows them to naturally make that choice of to narrow what they're looking at in terms of those 3 subjects. However, saying that, Anne mentioned it, plenty of schools, and ours especially, alongside the A-levels, run a qualification called the Extended Project Qualification, the EPQ. And for us, this is the element of their education which allows that real, genuine breadth of exploration of what they're interested in. So there is complete free rein as to what the pupils can study in their extended project. In fact, the only stipulation is that it can't be something they're already studying in their 3 A-levels. So I'm a supervisor for a number of pupils who are doing their extended project, and they do it on weird and wonderful subjects. So, I've got a girl studying the effect of exercise on mental health. I've got a boy doing his on the legacy of Michael Jackson. So, complete opposite ends of the spectrum. But what it enables is A, that breadth of study, but B, it also allows pupils to develop their skills of extended writing, of research, of genuine academic study. And so lots of schools will either offer something such as the EPQ or their own bespoke qualification, but it does allow, we are wanting to give that breadth of study as well as the incredible depth that you get with A-levels. And in addition to that, many A-levels, although yes, they might be constrained by a particular academic route, there is breadth within that. So, for example, if you study history, there's a huge, world history is enormous, and there is lots of optionality that pupils can opt for in that regard. So yes, I mean, you feel as if you are cutting out subjects, but actually it's showing that cross-curricular links, which is a huge element of what we do in A-levels, plus the extended project.
I think it's important to mention the extended project qualification, and it is a qualification. Can you just talk to us a little bit about the commitment, like the number of hours involved and how it is assessed and how it ends up on a transcript, for example?
Yes, absolutely. So the extended project qualification is worth half an A-level. Right. So it is for our university applications, there's a kind of tariff point score with that regard. And yes, it comes up with half the A-level points associated with it. Some schools run it as a 2-year qualification for the entire 2 years. Actually, a lot of schools, however, run it in just the first year of the A-level 2 years. And for us, we started we started before the summer term. So as the pupils are finishing their qualifications prior to A-levels, they can start thinking about the sort of areas that they want to study for their extended project. And we run it as a 2-term qualification. So they do a lot of their planning and research in the first term before Christmas. And then after Christmas, this is where they start to write and draft their project, which is then all internally marked. So we as teachers mark it. There's a process of internal moderation, external moderation, and they actually get their qualification at the end of that first year, which they can add as part of their university application. So they can say, I'm working towards these other subjects, but I've actually got my EPQ qualification in the bag. And lots of universities use that as a way of perhaps giving reduced offers for university, or as just evidence of things to be able to write about in their application letters and personal statements.
Right. How long has the EPQ been on offer in general?
Yeah, that's a very good question there. I've been aware of it for at least, I would say, about 5, maybe 10 years. There is an equivalent qualification for younger pupils as well, which many schools are offering in their GCSE years, in those middle school years. But it's certainly hugely gained in popularity because, to answer that question, it does offer that breadth.
And what's the other qualification for younger students?
Off the top of my head, it's called I think it's called the HPQ.
Okay.
I think, but I can't remember what that stands for. I'll have a look at that one.
We'll double check. Thank you.
Yeah.
I don't know if you can hear us. We're working on it. We're working on getting Anne back, and we're struggling with remoteness. We have a question actually. I think the EPQ is the perfect. You've just addressed it in a sense, because the question is asking about A-levels. Is it basically pen and paper, traditional sit-down exams? Is that an outdated mode of assessing children? But I believe you've addressed that. I don't know if there's anything you want to add.
There is more, I think, because, yes, I mean, one of the, Anne mentioned the reforms that took place about 4 or 5 years ago. And one of the reforms was that it moved A-levels a bit more to being a terminal process insofar as the exams at the end of the 2 years are the majority of the assessment. And there was a bit of controversy at the time with some teachers and pupils preferring continuous assessment over the 2 years. But actually, in order to succeed right at the very, very top levels in academia and the world of academia beyond, I think being able to draw upon a full 2 years experience, to be able to revise and see connections between all the things that you've been learning over those 2 periods, and then to be able to articulate exams at the very, very top level is a huge skill which speaks volumes about the academic rigor associated with A-levels. But saying that, there are many individual A-levels which have components of their assessment which are coursework based. So, for example, if you do history A-level, the pupils write a significant piece of research which is written as a piece of coursework over the 2 years, which is then internally marked and moderated, which then sits alongside the final assessment. The same in subjects like geography. So there are elements of that in some subjects where it's appropriate for study at university, etc., those skills that are in there. So yes, there are the traditional elements of those terminal exams, but ongoing coursework. And of course, some subjects such as art and design and music, there is a really significant component of that continuous assessment and far less emphasis on terminal exams. So really the assessment is appropriate to the subject, and I think that's really important.
And I know that you have thank you, and I know you have experience with IB as well. So it's not that IB is not so very different, is it, at diploma level?
No, absolutely. And I think, once, obviously we might have our own prejudices and previews of how these qualifications work, but actually there's a huge amount of similarity in that respect. There really is. So sometimes it comes down to the school itself rather than the qualifications when you're choosing these things. But I think we went through a process at my school a few years ago of weighing up the relative merits and pros and cons of the two approaches. But certainly when, for example, our maths department, we have lots of pupils who choose maths and engineering related subjects at universities, and they were vehemently opposed to the switch to IB because they really valued not only the maths A level but also the further maths A level, which really does stretch and challenge those pupils right at the top end who are so inclined, with that kind of mathematical scientific background, that they felt they wouldn't get that depth of study that at the IB. So there were lots of strong arguments for some subjects. Myself as a geography teacher, I was kind of in the middle. I could see the merits in both approaches, but it was the strong arguments from science and maths in particular that led us to retain the A-level qualification.
Makes sense. And you're back. Can you hear me?
So sorry about that, Ruth.
No worries. We got you back. So we have two geography teachers with us today. Who knew? And we just covered a little bit about the EPQ and how that adds in some breadth to the A levels. I know that you didn't hear what Tom said, but maybe you could just briefly go over how that works at Harrow.
I think the EPQ is a wonderful qualification, and it's highly regarded by universities, and all our pupils sit in EPQ, and they are involved in some independent research where they choose a topic of their choice, something that they're interested in, and they work with a mentor who they meet on a regular basis, and then they produce a piece of critical analysis of what they have chosen as their study area and present it to fellow students and staff at the end of their course. And I think it's something that is a really good piece of work, which is that bridge between school and university. And it's starting to develop those independent learning, independent thinking skills, and it gives them something that they can really investigate in depth and learn about, research about, and present, and talk about at interviews when they go to universities. And as I said, it's highly regarded by many universities across the world.
I want to come to university destinations in a moment. I just want to, before we get there, I want to talk about the sort of British style of learning, because I want to ask you really, how many individuals, how many mentors or tutors or guidance or counsellors are the children in touch with? I feel like a British school has a different approach to this as opposed to some of the other programmes. And how important is that to each individual child in choosing their subjects and guiding them through their studies to get them to where they want to be? Anne, if you can take that.
At Harrow, they all have a tutor who they work with on a daily basis. They meet daily with their tutors, and they oversee their academic and well-being, so their academic development and their emotional and social needs. But all their subjects, when they get to A-level, they have good relationships with their teachers in their subjects. I would argue that they are all mentors to them, and that they guide and support them through their courses and through their choices about university entrance. But we do have a formal sixth form. We have a deputy head of sixth form, and we also have someone who is a guidance coordinator for higher education, who will work with them on the various choices that are available to them, and also they work with them in terms of the courses that they take and the universities that they would like to opt to, the advantages and disadvantages, the pros and cons, I suppose, of both. So there is a lot of support, and everybody works together as well. They work closely together and to meet the needs of the individual.
Anything to add on that, Tom?
No, I think that model that it's clearly at place at Harrow in Hong Kong is something that we have here at SEDBA, and I think it is a challenging time, that transition from year 11 up into the sixth form, when pupils are making significant choices, especially when the choices for A levels are they're reducing a curriculum from perhaps 10 or 11, maybe 12 subjects down to those 3 or 4. And pupils sometimes don't get it right straight away, but there's flexibility. We have pupils who perhaps are making choices, maybe because their parents tell them these are the subjects they need to do, and then they perhaps have a slightly contrary view. And the role of the tutor, the role of the house master, house mistress, and guidance counsellors, etc., is about trying to perhaps make clear those sensible choices, and changes can happen. We have pupils who perhaps chose 3 subjects early on and might switch from one subject to another in October or November, and that is possible with the A level, because pupils have time away from their studies as well as the time in lessons. So if they need to, they can catch up work if perhaps they've made that wrong decision, and that flexibility is there, and that's something which does happen on occasions.
I want to ask Anne, I think that we'll start with you. I guess some students actually make the choice, they've gone through a different program of study, and then they end up choosing A levels for their final 2 years, and you must have experience of receiving students in, and how does the transition work, and how successful can those students adapt to an A level program?
Yes, I've got a lot of experience of that, and we've got children who've come from GCSE route, with children come from IB route, and it's just about supporting them as individuals. And I think if they have got the right motivation and the focus, and they have the ability, and obviously they're assessed before they come in terms of their suitability for the course, they transition very well. Children are very resilient on the whole, and they go on to adapt to the course. Obviously, again, as I said, they need to be supported sometimes by our staff, whether that's their tutor, their housemaster, their house mistress, their subject teachers. But I have experience of children who've done exceptionally well at A level, who've come from a middle years IB route, for example, and haven't taken the traditional GCSE and A level, and they've gone on to do great things.
I think, Tom, something to add?
Well, I think we as a school at SEDBA, we have a quite a broad academic ability range, and one of the things which we particularly enjoy about A level is that there is a range of outcomes there. Obviously, we can get fixated on the very, very top grades, and it is very challenging to get those very, very top grades. So in some subjects, we find, and it might not always be the case, but there are some subjects at A level which I think do require a certain higher level of prior ability, perhaps sciences and maths, for example. That smooth transition to A level can be challenging without the fundamentals there. But there are lots and lots of subjects which are incredibly accessible, and that if pupils are perhaps not aiming at those A's and A stars, but perhaps further down the line, hard work over those 2 years, because it is a 2-year course, even if they struggle in the first instance because maybe they haven't had that smooth transition from other qualifications, by the end of those 2 years they shine and their quality sings through. So I think that's another important point.
I want to touch on this idea that I feel that there's a perception amongst parents that the A levels, or the British curriculum in general, is a bit more academic than some other choices, and that leads me also to then ask you your view on league tables, because let's be honest, parents fixate on league tables. So Anne, could you comment on that? Oh, Anne, we've lost. Oh.
Well, I can answer that one. Obviously, league tables League tables are important, and they do show the academic standing of a school. And I know that a lot of people, as you say, Ruth, are fixated on them, but they don't show the overall package. Schools offer much more than just an academic education. It's about developing character. It's about giving children opportunities to shine and things that they will interests that they can take with them into later life. And I often say that, you know, I've had parents who've said to me in when I was head of a school in the UK, oh, you've slipped from number 34 to number 54. And frankly, you know, it's a matter of a few B's difference in grades. And if you were to move your children, changed its position in a league table, you'd be changing them on an annual basis. It's just one aspect of the education that schools provide. And I think I'm a great believer in going to visit schools, getting as much information, visiting the websites, undertaking virtual tours in the day and age we're living in now, and really feeling if you are the experts in your children, we're the experts in education, but parents are the experts in their own children, and they know which environment that they're going to fit into and truly thrive. And of course, league tables are important, but they are just one piece of information, and schools are about much more than that. And it's about looking at what they offer, the value added that they offer in terms of their extracurricular program, how they support children as individuals, and how they develop their character. And I think that's really key. And it's that overall education, that holistic education that's been provided to me, which is really important.
I don't think we would disagree. I just want to reach the obvious. We must make sure that we cover this point, because talk to us about the university destinations of A-level graduates other than the UK, and how do universities in the US, Australia, New Zealand, or wherever the destinations are, how do those universities view A-levels? I'll ask each of you. Tom, can you take this first?
Yes. Okay. So the majority of our pupils go to UK destinations, and therefore that transition from A-level to UK universities is a smooth one. But we have a significant proportion of international students at our school who do want to look at the whole world out there in terms of university destinations. So we regularly send pupils to universities in America, to the European Union, to Ireland and Holland and France, etc., as well as South America and Southeast Asia. And yes, all universities and application processes are slightly different. There are nuances involved there. But in terms of what does the A-level represent in terms of that ability to apply to those universities? Well, it represents something which is it is a known quantity. Universities respect it, universities understand it, and yes, especially in America, they might have their own application process and admissions test to take. But once we say that we run A-levels and these are the grades that the pupils are going to achieve, then that is well respected, and we're very successful at getting pupils placed in those universities. So a wide range there, definitely.
I agree with what Tom said there, and I think we need to do some myth busting over this. The majority of our pupils do go to universities in the UK, but we had pupils last year with 10 students who went into higher education in the States, 8% to Canada. We have pupils who go to university in Hong Kong. We have people who've been to China. We've had children who've gone to Australia. And it's a slightly different application process. You start building your portfolio earlier if you're going down the route of applying to US universities. We also have pupils who apply to both the UK and the US and then make their decisions later on. But it's making sure that teams in schools are aware of the different processes and supporting children in whichever route they wish to take.
I think it is a case, indeed, a case of myth busting, and we'll keep trying to do that. And also, maybe I can stay with you, Anne, for a moment. How would a parent, what are the sorts of conversations that you have with parents who are considering an A-level program, but they're just not sure whether it's right for their child?
Well, I think it is down to their child. As I said, they know their child and they know how they learn best and where they want to go on to following their sixth form. Are they children who breadth is important to them, or are they able to be focused and really enjoy studying in depth? Because you do 3 or 4 subjects at A-level, obviously you're using 6 subjects at IB, and it is down to the individual child and what their interests are, and how they learn. If they want more structured time, maybe they're better going down the IB route. If they can self-direct, and as I said, if they want to study Piro's history in real depth, for example, then the A-level route may be better for them. And as I said right at the beginning, if you could hear me, that both the IB and the A-level are very good qualifications. Whichever route your child goes down, they're going to get a very good education and come out with some excellent qualifications which will stand them in good stead.
Yeah, thank you. Tom, do you have
next stage of their education? But it's what suits one is their preference.
Yeah. Thank you, Anne. Tom?
I 100% agree with that. I can, you know, we have fewer conversations like that because, of course, you know, the IB, although it is prevalent in some schools in the United Kingdom, A-levels are the dominant choice. So usually there's less persuasion involved because it's just the normal route, as it were. But I think, you know, the question of depth versus breadth is an important one. But of course, as we've mentioned, we can get that breadth with our A-level provision by using the EPQ, especially as that tool.
Why do you think so many schools in the UK are dabbling with IB? And I believe that some schools really did dabble. They did it for a few years and they've actually now reverted to full A-level programme.
Well, I think many schools will have done that as to make them different from the competition, to offer something different, and many have done very, very successfully with it. You know, the IB is again a great qualification, and lots of pupils do well. So it's good to have that choice. It's good for parents to have that choice. It's good for pupils to have that choice, and it's good that there are schools out there, you know, willing to take that risk. I think that's great.
Okay, so we have a question. Maybe I can ask this. This is the elephant in the room. This is the world that we are living in and the disruption to the exams in the last year. And PC is asking, I mean, with the current persistent pandemic situation, what do the A-level exam structures look like this year? Perhaps we can extend that to GCSE as well. Anne?
Well, at the moment, it's known, Ruth. IGCSEs are continuing to take place at this moment in time as examinations, but GCSEs, exactly how they're going to be assessed, we don't know. There's a consultation out, which we as Harrow have contributed to, but exactly, there's lots of articles in the press, there's lots of rumours out there, but we are still unsure. And they're talking about teacher assessed grades, which they're going to call tags, and they're talking about mini assessments. What I do know is that it's a very difficult time for these young people. They're living with a lot of uncertainty, and that's not easy, and they are feeling out of control about how their grades will be assessed, and we need to support them because a lot of them are very anxious about that, understandably. And I think it's just important that we all keep calm, and once we do know, we will obviously do our very best for our children. I know that all schools will do that. Once we know how their grades are going to be assessed, I think it's important that whichever assessment is chosen, and this is something that I have been big campaign for, is that it is fair, and we've got children in very different circumstances who are going to be awarded grades. Those of us in international schools, those of us based in our qualifications, for example, GCSEs and A-levels are mainly examination boards based in the UK, so it needs to be fair, and we need to give children the very best opportunities to show what they can do, and I think that's really key. But it's a very, very difficult time for them at the moment, and for teachers who again are working with a system which is unknown, and I hope that we will have some news fairly soon on this.
What was the effect on last year's cohort? Obviously they had their grades and they've been accepted to. What's your experience in working with last year's graduates and during this disruption?
Well, again, it was, you know, it was difficult for them because they had been planning and working towards taking exams, and that was taken away from them. So they didn't feel that they had the control, but they adapted remarkably well, and our teachers worked incredibly hard. And I have to say that we had very, very few grades which were challenged at Harrow Hong Kong, literally a handful. And our pupils came out very well with the grades, which I truly believe they've worked very hard and consistently over that 2-year period, and they were rewarded with the grades I believe that they deserved. So the teachers worked very hard. They evidenced the grades which were given. We had a very clear procedure. It worked through various stages and was signed off for various people and was moderated and then went to the board. And as I said, I think the fact that we had a rigorous procedure which we all adhered to meant that there were so few changes in the end. But it's not easy for these young people at all. You know, they've been planning what they're going to do for their A-levels and their futures, and they feel that it's all been taken away from them. But we will do our best for them, and I know I speak for everyone in our profession when I say that.
Tom, anything to add on that?
Well, I think only that this year, the decision to cancel the exams at least has been taken earlier in this school year. You know, instead of it being after Easter, it was taken just after the Christmas holidays. So I think there was a little bit of a feeling, well, in fact, quite a bit of a feeling last year that the rug was pulled at a very late stage from underneath the pupils. And although I think our experience here at SEDBA is the same as Anne's, you know, the outcome at the end was the fair and right outcome. I think there were still pupils who were thinking, I didn't get the chance to shine on the day. I didn't get that opportunity to take my exam. Whereas this year, with the potential for ongoing assessments over the next 2 terms and these mini assessments and mini exams, at least the narrative that we're saying to the pupils, and I think they've really taken this on board, is, you know, you have a chance to shine now for the next 2 terms. You know, this is your opportunity to really prove your progress, to prove how well you're doing. And I think that will, at the end of it, give the pupils a much greater sense of genuine satisfaction that it's their efforts that have been awarded fairly. And I think that has to be the outcome that all qualifications seek to achieve, that you know, you've got to put the effort in and you get the due rewards. So I think with that extra term to play with and a bit of extra planning, etc., I think this will be a much more smooth and satisfactory process for sure.
Yeah, hopefully. Thank you. We have some questions. If you do have other questions, for those of you who are listening in, please go ahead and type them. I'm trying to get through them. We have a question about AP compared with A-levels, but I'm going to interpret that to mean, we discussed that graduates from either of your schools can very easily transition into US universities, but perhaps you can talk a little bit about what's involved. So it's A-levels plus. Maybe I can come to Anne to take that question.
A-levels plus, are you referring to the extracurricular?
No,
Sorry.
I'm referring to the requirements for US university admission.
Okay, US university admissions. So they take the SATs, they have to build their portfolio, and we have a US universities coordinator who supports them. Any child who's thinking of that route, I would argue at the beginning of year 9, year 10, they need to start building their portfolio and preparing for the different assessments that they are going to be taking. And again, it's back to having that guidance and people in place who've got expertise in the system, so they can support the children adequately going forward.
Tom?
Well, and nothing more to add on that one. I think, you know, in terms of the US university route, we have actually quite a number of pupils who go on to do things like sports scholarships, etc. So we often work with external agencies, etc., who support that process as well, with, you know, again, a wide range of evidence, academic as well as those other activities that come into play. But lots and lots of guidance, and of course, the A-levels play a significant role in that process. So, yeah.
Okay, thank you for your question, Lena. I hope that answers, and type in anything further. I just want to come to each of our panelists, and I mean the title of the webinar is the A-levels gold standard, and I've often heard it referred to that. Not quite sure why, but Anne, maybe you could just, is it the gold standard for education?
I believe it is, Ruth. I'm very familiar with the A-level system. It was what I've been brought up with, and all my experiences of A-levels. I think it is rigorous and challenging and well regarded across the world, and I think it stands our pupils in good stead for their future, and obviously often a time of reflection, and when they look back on their sixth form studies and their A-levels, it's a time that they get great satisfaction from, and are able to develop a real love of learning as a result of their choices at A-level, and the way in which they study and the way in which they interact with their teachers, and you know, they can access top universities or courses of their choice across the world, and I do believe it is a gold standard qualification.
Tom, I'm sure you agree.
Well, absolutely. I couldn't agree more. I think just in addition to that, I think one of the big advantages of the A-level, and I think Anne mentioned this previously, is that it breeds genuine independence of learning from the pupils. You know, they have to look at something in great depth, and yes, they get the teacher input, but a lot of that process over the 2 years is them having to understand the links between different parts of their learning to be able to then articulate that in extended writing in many subjects. And it really does, even though, you know, it is a huge amount about depth, it does broaden out their curriculum, seeing links between different subjects. And then, you know, there is that academic pressure of having to perform in those exams at the end, but I think that is what sets it apart from many other qualifications. And it's what sets pupils on a brilliant trajectory to tertiary education, absolutely, and beyond.
There we go. There's our soundbite, a brilliant trajectory to further education. Thank you to our panelists, Tom and Anne, and thank you so much. I'll pass back to Eva now.
Hi, welcome. Thank you very much for that. Sorry, I'm having problems with my video now, but it seems like we have come to the end of the webinar, and I would like to thank Anne and Tom for the valuable insights, and Ruth for moderating the panel. The conversation doesn't stop here, so let's join us on Facebook and connect with other parents. Scan the QR code that you see on the screen right in front of you. We want to take the time to thank our sponsors for making this event possible. Young International School, Christian Alliance International School, German Swiss International School, Herald International School Hong Kong, the Harbor School, and our partners, Top School and WISPA. With that, we hope you have a good day, and we look forward to seeing you at our next education events. Thank you so much for joining us, everyone. Thank you, Ruth, and thank you, Anne and Tom. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.